YORK David McCullough, the Pulitzer Prize-winning author whose lovingly crafted narratives on subjects ranging from the Brooklyn Bridge to Presidents John Adams and Harry Truman made him among the most popular and influential historians of his time, has died. He was 89. McCullough died Sunday in Hingham, Massachusetts, according to his publisher, Simon & Schuster. He had been in failing health and died less than 2 months after his beloved wife, Rosalee. One is to the historical record and to the analysis, and the other is to the reader who would like to be transported, both intellectually and viscerally. He sought himself as an everyman blessed with lifelong curiosity and the chance to take on the subjects he cared most about. His fascination with architecture and construction inspired his early works on the Panama Canal and the Brooklyn Bridge, while his admiration for leaders whom he believed were good men drew him to Adams and Truman. In his 70s and 80s, he indulged his affection for Paris with the 2011 release The Greater Journey, and for aviation with the bestseller on the Wright brothers that came out in 2015. Hamilton author Ron Chernow once called McCullough both the name and the voice of American history, while on Monday Burns tweeted that McCullough was a friend and gifted teacher to him. McCullough's celebrations of the American past also led to the toughest criticism against him, that affection turned too easily to romanticization. In earlier works, he was accused of avoiding the harder truths about Truman, Adams, and others and of placing storytelling above analysis. And millions of readers, and the smaller circle of award givers, were moved by his stories. He helped raise the reputations of Truman and Adams, and he started a wave of bestsellers about the American Revolution, including McCullough's own 1776. Well into his 80s, his books remained popular and seemed to inspire renewed interest in the subject. I have lost a friend. The world has lost a great man of letters. '48 on the Modern Library's list of the best 100 nonfiction works of the 20th century, and is still widely regarded as the definitive text of the great 19th century project. Jimmy Carter cited the path between the SAS-3 as a factor in pushing for the 1977 treaties which returned control of the Panama Canal to Panama, and politicians on both sides of the issue cited it during debate. Barack Obama included McCullough among a gathering of scholars who met at the White House soon after he was elected. The historian was nonpartisan for much of his life, but spoke out against Donald Trump in 2016, leading a group of peers that included Burns and Chernow in denouncing the Republican presidential nominee as a monstrous clown with a monstrous ego. McCullough also had one emphatic cause: education. He worried that Americans knew too little about history and didn't appreciate the sacrifices of the Revolutionary era. He spoke often at campuses and before Congress, once telling a Senate committee that because of the No Child Left Behind Act, history is being put on the back burner or taken off the stove altogether in many or most schools in favor of math and reading. "We have so little left that's authentic and real," McCullough said at the time. "To replace what we have with plastic contrived history, mechanical history, is almost sacrilege." McCullough, whose father and grandfather founded the McCullough Electric Company, was born in Pittsburgh in 1933. He ended up with Simon & Schuster, which released the book in 1968 for an advance of $5,000 and remained his publisher for the rest of his career. The Johnstown flood was successful enough that McCullough worried he would be typecast as an author of failure. Bad news, McCullough. So for his next book, The Great Bridge, he told a story of success. "That I knew little or nothing about civil engineering, that I had never done well in math or physics, or had much interest in things mechanical didn't deter me in the least," he later wrote. Mornings on Horseback won the National Book Award, but, Vidal noted, was overshadowed by the release of Edmund Morris's Pulitzer Prize-winning The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. It would be the last time a McCullough book received second billing. He had considered a biography of Franklin Roosevelt, but instead related to Roosevelt's less dynamic, more forthright successor, Harry Truman. McCullough spent the next decade writing the book, living for a time in Truman's hometown, Independence, Missouri, and making a daily routine, as the former president did, of a morning walk. Truman, published in 1992, was a million seller that kept and confirmed a long rise in the standing of a man who had left office 40 years earlier with an approval rating under 30% and now was virtually canonized as an honest and tenacious leader. Among the book's fans were presidential hopeful Ross Perot, who bluntly compared himself to Truman, and the first President Bush, who even consulted with McCullough during his unsuccessful bid for re-election. John Adams, published in 2001, was just as popular and just as helpful to its subject, with Congress passing legislation later that year to build a monument in honor of the second president. 17,763 came out in 2005, followed by an illustrated edition 2 years later. An HBO miniseries based on John Adams, starring Paul Giamatti and Laura Linney, aired in 2008. Tom Hanks was planning a miniseries based on McCullough's book on the Wright brothers. McCullough had 5 children and an affinity for happily married politicians such as Truman and Adams that could be traced to his wife, Rosalee Barnes, whom he married in 1954 and who died in June. She was his editor, muse and closest friend. At his home in Martha's Vineyard, McCullough would proudly show visiting reporters a photograph of their first meeting at a spring dance. The two gazed